Corey Diggs, pick up, please. Corey.
Yes.
Oh, Corey. A long.
How are ya?
I'm doing great. You know, I've been waiting for this for a long time.
I know. And I was napping, as you know. I was napping through the first half of your show, so I missed it. So I have this weird bug going on, and I'm like, damn it, I'm not calling this off. I have to talk to Frank.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, you're also, it's not just me, though. You're hanging out with Rob as well. So it's Corey, Rob, and Frank.
Hi, Rob.
How we doing, Corey? It's great.
Doing good.
You know what's funny, Corey? When you, it was probably maybe just, I don't know, maybe a couple of days after you and I spoke for the first time on Twitter, Rob and we got together for a workout one Thursday afternoon. I don't even know what was hot in the headlines at the time, but Rob had told me, hey, you know who you got to check out. You know, you should try to get on the show is this woman, Corey's Diggs. I said, you got to be kidding me. I just talked to her for the first time a couple of days ago. So that was probably around the time, you know, we were talking about this just a few minutes before we went to break. But all of that information coming out of Arkansas, I don't even know how. Everybody has special talents, and yours is being able to make sense of mountains of information. And has your work on that end been concluded, or is there, like, you know, to be continued as far as the Arkansas investigations, the Clintons, and all that?
I don't know. I go in probably. There's a lot of things where I have, as you've seen, like part 1, 2, 3. And so I actually have a part 3. What I do is I create a document, and then I'll just, as information drops, I'll drop it in there. And when it gets to a point where I feel like, okay, there's enough to this story, I have to now do, you know, part 3. And in fact, there's tons of investigations still open on this. And with since I did the Arkansas Swamp part 1 and 2, Jeremy Hutchinson, you know, they finally indicted him. And, I mean, he's got, God, I think he's indicted for 2 or 3 cases now, different cases. And then the Preferred Family Healthcare, they actually, or no, it's not them, but it's like an extension of them, a subsidiary of them, are suing him as well. It's pretty crazy. And they said that they were pushing the trial back to 2021 because of ongoing investigations. So if you remember that table that I did where I was like cross-referencing all these different court documents, trying to figure out who these different players were, and a lot of those names aren't filled in. We're still waiting for all that to drop. So yeah, I still pay attention to it.
And you know what? The scary thing, Rob and I were talking about this just in the earlier parts of the episode, where, you know, we're looking at the surface level headlines, at least the headlines that are within the bounds of acceptable debate in society, and how where everything, at times at least, looks to be mutually exclusive. What I'm starting to realize, and I think what everybody else is starting to realize too, is how crazy that even the most remote topics are tied in with all the same players, even when it stretches off into areas of measles and vaccines. Now, before I get into that, I wanted to preface this in a way, because I was watching I liked watching different things seasonally, and I was rewatching one of my favorite baseball documentaries, and it was getting into how this one chapter in baseball and American history where the media really impacted the spread of the game, and that was by introducing radio broadcasts throughout the 20s and 30s and whatnot, and how that really expanded out into, you know, getting women and children and entire family units involved in sports and all that. And they were putting a little bit of spotlight on Red Barber. And Red Barber, of course, started off in Cincinnati, but then became a longtime Brooklyn Dodgers play-by-play guy. And I'm listening to a little bit of a clip of the way that he was describing the ballpark and describing this beautiful spring day, and how that kind of imagery, the theater of the mind, was coming back home to American families in the form of radio. And he's saying things like, you know, it's a beautiful, warm, sunny day, clear skies, picturesque spring, you know, describing the smells of the ballpark. And he also said, it's a beautiful day. It's almost like, you know, no more measles. and also, tickets to the circus. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, how casually. It's so odd to listen to a voice from so long ago speaking so non-hysterically about measles. And, then I look at the ninnies, the same ninnies right now in our media who are crying over the measles, where they were the same ones who were telling everybody just in 2014 that we were being overly dramatic because there was an Ebola. There was an Ebola problem. Meanwhile, measles, you get over it, you have lifetime immunity, and Ebola is turning people's insides to soup. You've been working on measles lately. What do you think about all this?
I think a lot of things, Frank. I think that there's a shit ton of corruption going on. I think that vaccines is a giant slush fund, and I'm not saying that. I mean, I would need to comb through serious scientific evidence, real legitimate scientific evidence, to come to the conclusions as to whether it's, helped at some point in time with certain diseases. I'm not going to say that all vaccines are bad for us, but they definitely, if nothing else, they've been hijacked and weaponized. And I mean, even the measles vaccine, which, Merck is the exclusive manufacturer of, they've been using the same damn, watered down strain from the 60s. It's pretty crazy. I don't even know how you do that. I was thinking about that the other night. How do you do that? How do you stretch something through thousands and thousands of vaccines like that? So yeah, it's definitely. I can ramble on and on if you want about vaccines, but
no, I love it all, and it's really that this has been just another one of those Coey Diggs learning experiences for me, because I think you're on part 5 now of measles and millions, and what's it called?
Measles, Masterminds, and Millions. Yeah, I just published part 5. And part 6 will be the final chapter to that in a couple days. But I just want people to know, because it's funny. It was interesting laying it out like this, because normally I do it all in one huge report. And I'm like, this is just too damn big. I mean, no one's going to want to sit and read through 50 pages of this. So I'm going to just start, doing this in bite-sized chunks. And what's interesting is then, I'll post it on Twitter and everyone will throw in their 2 cents on it, which I love. And they'll bring up points. Well, make sure you cover this and make sure you cover that, and and get into eugenics and this and that. And the thing is if anyone's ever read my work, I try to break it down as an operation from start to finish that people can understand and follow along. So with the measles outbreak, I was trying to focus on using that as the focal point. Instead of going off in 100 different tangents in the vaccine industry, which we could, I just focused on the measles outbreak and Merck and, the lawsuits going on with them, and dating back to, and honestly, Frank, I did not think I was going to come across, I know the Clintons are somewhat involved with the vaccine industry, but I stumbled across, back in 1994, that they are the ones who implemented the free and mandatory vaccines for children's program.
Yeah, and that's part of this amazing kind of spider web of crazy connections that I'm realizing that if you go back far, it's almost like those graphs where that little girl went and showed that pretty much aside from 1 or 2 presidents, everybody is related to the same person or something like that. But with this
Right.
measles, masterminds, and millions that you've been putting together, when you say masterminds, are you talking about families like the Clintons? Is it somebody in particular,
Yeah.
or is it a certain cluster?
It's the Clintons, it's big government, it's big pharma, it's, they're the masterminds behind this. And when you start following the money and the program and who's making these laws and rules and the children's vaccine schedules, and seeing how the government is liable for it, not the manufacturers. So basically, the taxpayers are liable, and the taxpayers are supplying the vaccines. Like in 2017 alone, I just have this particular number in my head, we spent $4.3 billion on vaccines, because when they set up when the Clintons set up that program back in '94, what it did is it created these, mandatory vaccines, which, as you know, they keep growing over the years, more and more. And it set it up so that children, it was either going to be covered through insurance, or it would be covered through Medicare. Medicare, right? I always get those two mixed
It is
up.
Rob. Medicaid is the old people one, right? It's Medicare is just for everybody.
Yeah.
And by the way, Rob, anything, just jump on in with any of this stuff.
Okay.
No, it's Medicare. I believe so.
Okay. And then, so basically, that means, taxpayers are not only paying for the vaccines, but then when people file petitions for claims on injury or death, and that gets settled behind closed doors, and we don't get to hear about it, that we're paying for those settlements as well, which to date, going back to 1988, is $4.1 billion.
That's
So
those are just the injury payouts since when?
Yeah.
Wow.
So the vaccine has
Since
caused.
88.
I was going to say the vaccines cause more problems than the actual thing that they're vaccinating against.
Coey, were you in all of your research on this? Were you able to see what year the MMR vaccine was combined into one instead of three separate ones? Rob and I were talking about that before we went live, and didn't know if you would know that.
I'm trying to think. I'm not sure specifically. I know I'm not in front of my computer. I want to say, is his name, is it Hillman? The one who actually came up with the strain. He was working on his own daughter who had the measles, and he's the one who, I guess you could say patented it, and he turned the license over to Merck. And I believe that happened back in the 60s, but I don't know at what point, it became like a 3-in-1. I'm not positive on that.
Okay, so either way, it doesn't that doesn't really impact
Because I was looking at my birth certificate, and there's measles, and then there's mumps, and it looked like there was separate vaccinations, and then the dates on there were different.
Yeah, I was trying to remember myself. I was asking my parents a couple weeks ago because I still, the mark. Well, I know Frank's age. I don't know your age, Rob, but I know I'm probably
40.
older than both of you. Okay, so I'm 49.
Okay.
And I remember the mark on my shoulder, and it looks like a circle with a bunch of little dots.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
So
it was like three pricks in one, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was more than 3. So
Okay.
I don't remember what all that included. I'd have to go back and search that.
Okay.
Well, when I was looking at this stuff now, so the picture that you're painting here is that we're looking at taxpayer-funded and subsidized vaccines. We're looking at also taxpayers are paying out what injuries are being compensated for. Not only that, but just within the last couple of months of the research that I've been doing just to prepare for interviews that I have put together, especially the one with Forrest Moretti when he came on the show back in April, I learned a lot about the VAERS system, the vaccine adverse event reporting system, and that was shocking to me, where the CDC, or I think it was Harvard, you saw that Harvard study that said that even the vaccine injury reporting system was only picking up approximately 1% of what was going on, which means, and when they show you what they had accounted for, you're talking about hundreds of deaths, and you're talking about thousands of reported injuries or rashes, whatever the hell it is.
Right.
And then if you
the other thing too is that people keep talking about is the debate whether there's the connection between autism and the vaccines as well. I mean, Coey, do you know any? Did you come across any correlation or causation or correlation between those?
I didn't dive real deep into that but I covered it in, I don't remember which part now of my reports that I covered it in, but I basically pointed people to Cheryl Atkinson because she's done phenomenal work on this.
Okay.
And she covered a case that was settled for autism. Now, of course, the government will not admit, they will not admit to guilt.
Right.
So otherwise they can't keep going forward with their vaccines.
Right.
So yeah, and I know this is kind of like slightly off topic, but I'm just thinking of lawsuits here. And in part 5, I was covering, I was kind of blown away by the rap sheet. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look over that, but the lawsuit by their own scientists, I think they're virologists, that's been going on since 2010 is over the efficacy rate of the MMR, and they're saying that they used rabbit antibody to fabricate the results because they wanted to maintain the FDA license for the measles so that their competitors, couldn't jump in, because they're basically the sole provider here, at least in the U.S. So that lawsuit's still going on. And what's interesting is when I started diving into other lawsuits and their fines that they've paid, they were told back in, I'm going from memory here, it was either the 60s or 70s, I think, they were told to tone it down on their labels regarding efficacy on, and I don't remember which pharmaceutical it was. And then there's other cases where they weren't reporting or releasing the information on their clinical trials that had to do with safety. So they were fined. These people have been fined millions of dollars for bribing healthcare professionals to push their drugs, and Medicare, I think Medicare and Medicaid fraud. And what kills me, I just did a tweet on this morning because it just irks me. It's like these people get fined and they don't lose their license and no one goes to jail, and they literally put people's lives in danger. They had I think it was an arthritis drug, and this goes years back, and I think that was in the 60s, and they knew that it caused cancer in animals that they were testing on, but they did not put that warning out. And so they were giving this to pregnant women, and some of the kids were coming out and ending up with vaginal cancer. So they ended up having thousands of people filing lawsuits. And, of course, they ended up getting fined for that. And they did pull it from the market, but why doesn't anyone go to jail for this?
It brings so much so much else up when you start to frame it this way, because you start. I mean, we always kind of joke about it in a tragic little way. How every time we see a commercial, first of all, I think I am not one for banning things. I am not one for to ban this, ban that, sticker this. I'm not one for doing that. But one thing I will say, I would sign up for in a second is to stop pharmaceutical companies from advertising on television. It is the most ridiculous thing I can think. Ask your doctor today. What are you talking about? My doctor supposedly went. He supposedly went, or she supposedly went to school for 15 years. They don't know that the drugs are out there.
Right.
I mean, to go in there and already start petitioning your doctor to see if this drug is something you can take home. That is ridiculous. If I can't see a Camel commercial anymore, if I can't see somebody smoking a cigarette or cracking a beer open on television, why the hell am I watching these people with these antipsychotic drugs whose side effects are like death?
Yeah, right. Suicidal thoughts or actions.
But Corey, on to getting away from the anal leakage and all that stuff. The other thing that you're really bringing to the surface about this is really, once again, the public money that's being used to develop and push and promote this stuff, and then public money that's being used to pay out on injuries, and then, of course, as we know, I think during the Reagan administration, they created that new vaccine court. I think was it during the Reagan administration we had the vaccine court?
86, yeah.
Yeah, we know that there is pretty much a separate justice system just for handling this kind of thing, and it really does.
It's the damn pharmaceutical industry, though, Frank. So I broke that down. I don't remember which part. Sorry, but In one of them, it was probably like 3 or 4. I broke that down. I got into the vaccine compensation program, and I got into how the committees are organized, the full structure of it, and the like, for example, so the CDC has, they work with the FDA, and then there's a few committees that they work with that are in charge of, well, one specifically is in charge of setting up the vaccines for the children's schedule. So basically, like, the VAERS reports and all the safety reports that come in and that are reported go to those people, and they're the ones who decide if they think it's still safe to keep on the children's schedule. And now these are all these people on there are like, doctors and from universities, and the universities are being paid to do the research for the vaccines, and it's just a damn, circle that they're all in. But then they work with this vaccine coalition group that is basically in charge of the narrative. So they produce all the educational materials that go out to, thousands and thousands. I think they get like 500,000 downloads a year from their 250 different publications and their websites, and it's all the educational materials and the narrative on vaccines. And guess who funds them? The pharmaceutical industry.
It's almost like hearing that all of the how much stake the tobacco companies actually had in the quitting all of the patches and stuff like that, the Nicotrol patches and stuff. It's crazy, and those, and of course those. I know that there's a lot of different opinions about people who do all of the e-cigarettes to at least get all. I know that it's become a spectator sport. I know that the e-cigarettes have become a spectator sport, but there are people that have used them to get off of the cigarettes and then leave it behind. It was the pharmaceutical.
Like me.
Yeah. Oh, my buddy Mike did it too. Although
I'm still using it.
Yeah.
Cold turkey right here.
Cold turkey.
Right here. 3 weeks so far.
I did cold turkey once.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, I've done
you.
it before too. I'm sorry? Yeah.
Yeah, I did it once I quit for 2 years a long time ago, and then I, was stupid and started again.
Yeah, the problem with cigarettes is they're so awesome.
Right.
I know.
They're just so
They
classic.
feed those nicotine receptors we need.
I know.
Oh, speaking of nicotine receptors, I've been reading a lot about that because, Rob, I skimmed through the Cosmic Serpent again, so I'm reading a lot about the tobacco consumption with all of the shamans and the Amazon and all that stuff. But going back to Coey, I think that this is it's one of those things where it's almost like a stenciled, so you can put this stencil over so many different types of problems we're having, where we see almost like hidden monopolies. It's one thing to say, okay, well, we know that Carnegie owns all the steel in New York, in the country. We have U.S. Steel here, and we have so and so the railroads over here, whatever. This family owns that. That family's a big coal tycoon. But it's almost like hidden secret monopolies where you have the same interest.
Certain people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Involved in all of it. Like everywhere you turn. Yeah, the Clintons are in everything, and they're like the puppets for the puppet masters, and Bill Gates too. Of course, I included him in this because Gavi is teamed up with the WHO, and they all just work together, and that's why I did the piece on the former World Bank president Jim Young Kim, because he's tied in with all of this, and he's been like this fly under the radar, silent man, like on the pegboard that's moved around from Partners in Health to the and then he worked for the WHO, and he was all part of pushing the whole AIDS agenda, AIDS medicine and everything. That's the biggest slush fund out there.
Well,
AIDS and vaccines.
Let me ask you about that since you brought up Bill Gates. And I know that you have been and you have to be hyper-focused because, as you said before, to break off into any number of tangents would mean that you are spending the rest of your existence and 3 more existences in just trying to fill out the family tree of all the things that connect to one specific issue. But as far as Bill Gates and vaccines go, his eugenicist means. I mean, just the way do you ever go into the eugenics side of things, the global population control side of things? Because he has made a number of statements in public that have, I mean, it's not even something that could be translated one way or another. He's pretty much saying if we do everything right with inoculations, and if we get more creative with the way that we inoculate the public, we should be able to reduce the population by X amount. I mean, he's saying this. He's actually, it's like and people are clapping like, brilliant, yes.
Right.
So like, do you ever cross that kind of those themes when you're doing work on stuff like this?
Yes. So that file is called Kingpin, and I have been gathering information on him for the past 2 years, and I have every intention in the next couple months to do a big ass report on eugenics.
Wow.
Because there are things that I'm seeing in because I'm really big on timelines. I just make so many discoveries when I do the timelines. So I'm seeing some things just in some timelines I've been coming across and kind of working together that I've not really seen pointed out before. So I'm working on that. It's huge, and make no mistake about it. This is still going on. They just don't use that word anymore. I mean, it's going on. It's still going on big time in China, and over here they just call it, oh, we have the largest DNA lab where we have 2 million different DNA samples here, and we're working on genetics and this and that. They call it other things, but it's still.
Hey, you just bring something up that makes me think about last year. Lauren and I, we went out to Maine for our 1 year anniversary. It was beautiful, and we were out in Acadia National Park, and we were taking this trolley ride around there. And all of a sudden, in the middle of Acadia, first of all, this was a big Rockefeller hangout. This entire park. I mean, the entire thing is Rockefeller influenced and stuff like that. But right in the middle of the national park is Jackson Laboratories, and they do a lot of genetic testing there, and and now they didn't get the tour guide didn't get too far into it. But then again, all he has to do is mention one thing, and I'm sitting there going, "What the hell are we driving past right now?" And it's right in the middle of this sprawling, beautiful national park. If you continue with your genetic research and all that stuff, please take a look into Jackson Labs to see if anything kooky pops up on my behalf, please.
I will. And is that in New York, or what state did you say that was in?
That's Maine.
In Maine. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll write that one down, and yeah, definitely.
No, it was really weird how it just popped up in the middle. I think I might have remembered some more about it. I can. The best thing about this is my entire life is on video now, so I can just go back. I can just go back to, the first show back from Maine and just see the entire retelling of our little honeymoon. So that was that. Okay, well, hey. So
well, you know what?
Yeah.
Well, just real quick, one thing I want to say though is a lot of people I see talking about depopulation, and for me, it's more what I see, anyways. Is look, if they wanted to do mass depopulation, they could have been doing that over the last several decades here. I feel like the depopulation is like collateral damage to them playing around with DNA. You know what I mean? So I think they're trying to alter humanity, and the in doing that, it's I understand the end game, and I understand the whole what is it in Georgia? What is it, like 500 million people is their cap? Yeah. But I think it's more about altering humanity, if that makes any sense.
It does.
I'll be digging into it more so I can better explain myself down the road.
Well, let me just say, and Rob, I don't. We've talked about things like this before, and I think maybe the beginning of this show, can lead us in that direction there too. I see that we are being altered and manipulated in a number of ways. There's definitely something going on atmospheric. I think that the dominance over us, they are approaching full spectrum dominance. There's something going on.
Or looking to suppress something or reroute something for sure.
Yes, there's something atmospherically is going on. The way that we are eating, the way that we're drinking, the medication, the drugs, whatever the hell it is, that's all a part of it. The air, everything, it's all a part of it. There's definitely ideological subversion that's going on. The ideological subversion is actually getting people to not want to have kids just on their own volition. We were talking about this. I brought it up real quick yesterday. The Associated Press reported that the birth rate now for the United States, the native-born United States, is 1.7.
So it's below. Per couple.
Replacement of the population is 2.1 children per couple per woman, and we are at 1.7 now. We know the average European country is around 1.3 to 1.5. So there are less and less people that belong to Western civilization every year. So we know that population replacement is coming from other places. I do not think that they give a damn about the poor from other nations. I think they just needed an invasion force, because that is the only place where the population is skyrocketing. It's the third world. We are being culled, but ideologically and environmentally, that is definitely part of the plan. So I don't know what the end game actually is, but it definitely seems that we are in the latter phases of a setup.
And I want to get your guys' take on this, because Rob brought up autism. So something that's crossed my mind just in looking at some of the different biological labs and facilities that they're working with and whatnot, and then we look at the vaccines. And so what if, I'm just throwing this concept, this theory out there. What if they were trying to create I know this sounds counterproductive, but a more intelligent race, okay? They want the race, they want to control the race, they want to control the population, they want to control many factors, but they want to have a high level of intelligence, and they're using, they're using guinea pigs, whether it's here or Africa or wherever. And in doing that, we get this result of autism, which is, actually highly intelligent individuals. And it's just something that's crossed my mind.
I don't. You start.
Well, I mean, I've certainly heard about this type of thing before, whereas, I hate to give too much, us versus them, or too much, give too much power away in that respect. But, almost like how do you develop, right? Like, I mean, do you develop the easy way, like on Easy Street when everything's handed to you, or with a little bit of adversity and you push through? And maybe in that big picture where, that we are experimented on or whatever, and the outliers will push us through. I've heard that type of idea before. It's definitely a possible thing, like almost like the I hate to say this word controllers, but we know what we're talking about. Cabal, this type of thing, is doing they're pushing down on the collective, so that the pop-up effect on the other end will surpass what the normal baseline was. That's how there'll be the next level of progress through, because it's true. I mean, when you talk about autism stuff, they're able to do different type of things that is that the regular of us can't comprehend. But there's also that deficiency socially as well in there.
Yeah, I'm
right.
honestly, Corey, I'm on the opposite side of this. I think that there just might be a little bit more of a cynical thing behind, maybe also just best intentions, but it's just not working out, and people don't want to admit that things are going wrong. As far as trying to create, I think that we have all the genetic makeup we need to excel to insane levels of intelligence. We also see that in just different parts of the world. I actually see us all as different breeds of dog. You know how some dogs are more intelligent than I see. I just see that happening there too, where there's just a lot of that going on there too, just naturally. As far as saying that there could be a plan of making people more intelligent because there are, I hate to say different shades of autism, but
Right.
different shades of autism that you become almost, savant-like, where
Right.
it's like Rain Man. You drop a box of matches on the floor, and you can count it. You look up at the Empire State Building. I know there's 1,000 windows there. That kind of stuff there. To say that was the intention, I just don't know, because I just think back to Sean from SGT Report coming on this show about a month ago now, and actually attacking that point where people say that this, those who don't want to admit that perhaps the habits that we have of inoculating and eating and our environmental toxins, they don't want to admit that we're living in a highly toxic situation here, so they actually start saying that autism is a gift instead of something that really, in many cases, is something very hard for both the person affected by it directly and, of course, their support system, their families, their guardians. It's something that requires a lot of therapy. You lose that social affluency and stuff like that. It's really is a challenge, and I think that it would actually be. I think it would actually be a little bit more of a detriment of us to start looking at it as what might be a giving, a medical gift that we're trying to give to people instead of an injury. So that's my take on it.
Right.
But
And that makes sense.
hey, well, listen.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I would prefer everything to develop organically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For
Right.
sure, without having to sacrifice so much collateral damage of.
Yeah, you don't want
So many
to-
people.
I hate seeing people struggle.
Yeah.
It's because struggle is part of life as it is.
Certainly.
But we tend to whether it's good intentions or nefarious, depending on who you are and who we're looking into, we tend to add extra layers of struggle onto things that are already hard enough.
Are you familiar with? I think it was Above Top Secret, the website.
No.
No? Okay. Well, there was a thing there where somebody claiming to be one of these elite insiders, take it for a great grain of salt, anonymous website type of thing, board. But it was basically saying along those lines, where, listen, yeah, you guys are sheep and cattle to them, but what they're doing is for eventually to come through the other side for the betterment of the species.
What do you think about that, Coey?
Oh, that their intentions are good for the betterment of the species.
Right. This is not something that I would agree with at all. Like I said, I would rather us progress,
but in their own
organically, in their own twisted
demented way.
or more like, it's tough love. If you look at the long game,
Right.
You know what I mean? Like when you work out, right? We work
Yeah.
out. So what do? You know what I mean? You sit there and you think about it. No, you got to do it. You got to go through the pain and the sweat and the thing. And again, I think it's a demented and sick mentality for sure.
I think in the end, the sickest thing in the end is maybe there's a little bit of everything. Everybody's intentions, everybody's trying. It comes down to even just when we talk about global dominance and who on the world stage is trying to get the upper hand on everybody else. Some people like whittling it down to just one theory. I think that there's always competing factions of people who are just playing the game and trying to get the edge. Coey, I can't thank you enough for the time. I know you're not feeling well. I can't thank you enough for the time you spent with us tonight. I've had your URL up on screen the entire night. For those of you guys and gals who are listening on podcast, please check out CoreysDigs.com. Coey, anything you want to say in conclusion of tonight? And I hope that this has been a comforting experience for you. You come back.
It's been great, Frank. No, really, I appreciate you having me on. And I'm working on part 6. I should have that out either Sunday or Monday, and then I already have a few other reports I have in the works. So and eugenics is on my list, so that'll be an interesting trail to go down. That's about as deep as the vaccine industry itself. So yeah, That's what I will be working on over the next several weeks.
Well, you do fantastic work, and we all appreciate the effort you put into it. And you're always welcome back on this show. You know that, and keep us all up to date.
I will. Thanks for having me on.
All right, thank you so much, everybody. Cory Diggs, thank you so much, Cory.
Thank you.
All right,
Cool.
Bye-bye, guys.
bye-bye.
Take care.
Yeah, man.
That was great. That was
Yeah.
great. You know, I guess it would be better if you were still on the line to say it, but I have a lot of respect for people that do things with integrity, despite, especially when it's maybe not as fortuitous for your own self. You know.
Absolutely.
So people should go out and support her any way they can, or at least just check it out and make your own conclusions.
Yeah, and share her stuff and just it's a great conversation starter at the very least. And, with that, let's just take a really quick break. We come back, and I know it's 8:52, but we'll stay on to like 9:05 or something like that so we can take a couple more calls. I think we still have a little bit left in us. This has been a great, great show, so we'll be right back